All right, everyone. Welcome. Hopefully everything's good. Yeah, we're good. Yesterday, I actually had an incident. I was talking to nobody for like 5 minutes. So just wanted to avoid that, make sure we're actually live. Good morning, everyone. All right. A couple of things. Stay tuned to the end. We're going to talk more about our upcoming fast, and I'm going to give you some preparatory resources since we have that coming up in under a week. We'll do some fasting time together. I'm not expecting a huge turnout for this, but I wanted to get the process started. And honestly, there's just nothing like getting it started, even if it's small. It's not the number of people that are there that matters. It's the doing it. And like this, it's helped me keep me accountable as much as anything else. So there's a selfish kind of a a notion with this. So at the end of today's broadcast, we'll talk more about that. So that'll be great, and I'll give you some additional resources tomorrow. I'm actually going to we're working on a video about fasting, and so I'm hoping to have that hopefully done today. If not, tomorrow. Or we'll just do it live, whatever works. Awesome. Well, before we begin with Proverbs 7 today, let's take a moment of prayer and we'll go forward. Father God, thank you for another day. Thank you for exciting things to come. Thank you that you take care of us no matter what. And so, Father, we ask that you would transform the words of the page into true wisdom for us, that we would be offended, that we would actually have a reason to change what is going on in our lives, that we would have the righteous indignation about the things that we see in ourselves, that we will change for better. And so thank you for these words of correction and for hope this morning. We ask that you be with us in Jesus' name. Amen. I think that's officially the first time I've ever prayed to be offended. I'm not sure why I did that. I guess we're going to find out, aren't we? So let's dive into this, shall we? That button is not the right button. Here we go. All these toys, I swear. Proverbs 7, reading from the Message translation. Oh, here we go. Dressed to seduce. I can already tell we're getting right into kind of some of the stuff we were talking about yesterday. So let's dive in. Dear friend, do what I tell you. Treasure my careful instructions. Do what I say, and you'll live well. My teaching is as precious as your eyesight. Guard it. Write it out on the back of your hands. Etch it in the chambers of your heart. Talk to wisdom as a sister. Treat insight as your companion. They'll be with you to fend off the temptress, that smooth-talking, honey-tongued seductress. So you see in this translation, as others, that we have these capitalized titles. In other words, these are characters that we're talking about here, but they, in terms of character, they also have some meanings. And so it's not just poetry here. There's actually some instruction along with this, but you're able to determine who we're talking about as well. And so this is multiple different uh, narrators here, but in this one specifically, we have we think King Solomon actually observing this, and so here's an observation. As I stood out from the window of my house, looking out through the shutters, watching the mindless crowd stroll by, crowd watching, I spotted a young man without any sense, arriving at the corner of the street where she lived, and then turning up the path to her house. It was dusk, the evening coming on, the darkness thickening into night. Just then a woman met him. She had been lying in wait for him, dressed to seduce him. Brazen and brash she was, restless and roaming, never at home, walking the streets, loitering in the mall, hanging out at every corner in town. So, a quick note here. So, the message translation has a notion of bringing things into modern contexts. So, obviously the Hebrew or the Greek text wouldn't have said loitering at the mall or in the mall, but we get what we are seeing here. Let's continue with the scene, and then I'll describe something that I've observed as well. She threw her arms around him and kissed him, boldly took his arm and said, "I've got all the makings for a feast. Today I've made my offerings, my vows are all paid, so now I've come to find you, hoping to catch sight of your face, and here you are. I've spread fresh, clean sheets on my bed, colorful imported linens. My bed is aromatic with spices and exotic fragrances. Come, let's make love all night. Spend the night in uh, ecstatic lovemaking. My husband's not home. He's away on business, and he won't be back for a month." Yeah. We'll continue the scene here, and then we'll come back to this. Soon she has him eating out of her hand, bewitched by her honeyed speech. Before you know it, he's trotting behind her, like a calf led to the butcher shop, like a stag lured into an ambush and then shot with an arrow, like a bird flying into a net, not knowing that its flying life is over. So, friends, listen to me. Take these words of mine most seriously. Don't fool around with a woman like that. Don't even stroll through her neighborhood. Countless, countless victims come under her spell. She's the death of many a poor man. She runs a halfway house to hell, fits you out with a shroud and a coffin. So again, we see a notion here of of a specific temptation, and it's, if it didn't make you uncomfortable to read this, then something's not right. And I know that we see this in movies, we see this in modern culture. This is what would be considered normal to some, but at our core, we know this is wrong, right? We know this is not something we want to be doing. So um, let's not, first of all. But I will say that in my travels, I used to travel a lot for work, and so I would be away quite a bit, and um, even you know I figured being a overweight, unattractive IT person would be adequate protection, that I wouldn't have to worry about anything like this ever. But that was not true, not at all. In fact, I when you have this picture of someone, like you can see it happening, kind of things. Um, I have actually witnessed this happening myself, with people I've been traveling with. It doesn't matter if it's at a conference or even for just work, and seeing um, colleagues, fall into this temptation at a bar or whatever, and falling into some things we'll talk about later on, I'm sure. But honestly, um, this seems awfully one sided here. But it is interesting that, like I was saying yesterday, there are a lot of things that just have not really truly changed. There's a sense of wanting, needing validation, that sort of thing. And the funny thing is, when I look at this, I'm not seeing necessarily a um, like a physical kind of a need here. This is something that's fulfilling. It's a different level of evil. It's less insidious, and I guess you could say less in a moment. It's more deep and seductive than that. It's more of a power play. It's a you know, look what I'm able to do kind of thing. And then there's probably things behind the scenes like validation and acceptance and things like that. They're fulfilling certain needs like that as well. And with the young man, without any sense, yeah, just is taken in by this. But honestly, I love the analogy here of how, like I mentioned yesterday, how we can be like this as people. We can be very much as a church and as a body of believers. A lot of times we will do these same kind of things. We'll allow things to seduce us and be ignorant of our commitments, and we will cheat on God and think there's no consequence. But there's consequences. you know. Um, I like the analogy. Let me pull this back up. The honeyed speech. It's that whole there's no danger here. There's no, and I'm obviously willing. Let's make these bad choices and not call them bad choices. Um, but to highlight this part right here, this is critical for understanding this. I've got all the makings for a feast. Today I've made my offerings, my vows are all paid. In other words, she feels she's justified in this. She feels that it's okay. And it's not, going to be any consequences from God. Now, obviously, she still thinks that there would be consequences if her husband was home. This would not be appropriate behavior if he was home. So those of us that walk in wisdom can see this, right? We can see that there's a difference here. How we act in one circumstance, and justify ourselves in one, doesn't match another circumstance, and that's a good thing to remember when it comes to thinking about whether behavior is justified or not. We can look at that same kind of measure and say, what if the context was different? Remember yesterday, or was it Monday? Yeah, days are running together. I think it was yesterday though that I actually talked at length about the concept that the world takes things out of context, but we as people that walk in wisdom need to be taking things in context. And so when we put these kind of situations into a context and be aware of that context and say, well, what if this element was changed? What if that context were different? Would we still behave the same way? And so when it comes to things like believing there are no consequences, yet you still do a behavior that if that situation was a little bit different, there would be consequences. Does that make the behavior correct? No. And so we know these things at our core. That's the great thing about how we've been created, how wisdom works, is that it is something is infused to us. We know the right way. And like I said, I've seen this happen in literal context and figurative ones all the time. I have unfortunately witnessed people that are in the church or in church leadership, junior leadership, that sort of thing, that are seduced by various things that say, okay, well, so it's okay to seek after these other things and secretly like advance, and do things that are not um, what the church is calling us to, and that sort of thing. Or I've literally seen, unfortunately, I've literally seen ambitions cloud um, a ministry, and to where someone who has ambitions of being like the person, the senior pastor. I've seen things where they will manipulate situations and leave churches, or even in one case that I'm thinking of, cause circumstances to happen where the existing pastor was shown the door, not because of anything they were doing wrong, but because the situations were manipulated behind the scenes. Well, is that God honoring? Is that no? That's the honeyed speech. That is that you know being bewitched and being manipulated. And so we have to be aware of these things in more than just circumstances like this particular marital infidelity situation. There's a lot of other situations where we have to be aware of, if this were a different, if this little thing about the scenario were changed, would we still behave the same way? If different people were watching me today, would I behave the same way? If there were something that I knew that my actions today were going to be put in front of 10 million people to examine, would I do the same actions? Those are the kind of things we need to be thinking about. Those are the kind of things that we need to be aware of and allow ourselves to walk in that wisdom, because it's a more comfortable thing, right? We don't have to worry about the true consequences when we know, am I willing to say things that are going to be taken by 10 million people, of what I'm saying right now? Yes, because this has been true in my life. I know this is not just you know um, a notion of emotion here. This is something that has been proven out, that is proven through the ages and proven in my life. So am I confident in saying this, even in the context like that? Yeah, let's do it. Yeah. So this is the kind of things that we need to be thinking of, and so I hope that's helpful to you today. But let's talk about fasting a little bit here. So on the 12th, which is next Monday, on August 12th, we are going to start a process of preparing for a time of fasting. Now, there- there's a lot of different notions about fasting that are varied about this, because the Bible doesn't actually have specific guidance towards fasting, contrary to somewhat popular belief, I guess. It is a cultural thing where there's been knowledge of what fasting is, but it's not necessarily that there's a specific way. It's just that it needs to be done. There was a time when Jesus sent out his disciples early on in the ministry, and they were doing all these great things, and they were able to do great um, feats. They were able to heal. They were even able to do things like raise people from the dead, or that sort of thing. It was um, an amazing time of power. But they came across a demon they could not cast out, and they came to Jesus and said, "Well, why is this that this one thing wouldn't happen?" And Jesus said that this only comes out through prayer and fasting. Now, it didn't mean that in that exact moment that they needed to stop and start fasting to get this demon out. I think he was referring to a lifestyle of being a person who regularly is fasting. So I do at least two times of fasting a year, sometimes three. But what I do is I make this part of my lifestyle, instead of be a big oh, woe is me, I'm fasting, oh, I'm feeling horrible, and I make this part of my practice, and that is what gives power. That is what uh, I know that Satan is afraid of this, because he has come after me before for doing this. And in 2021, I did a time of this, and my attacks were multiplied. I was sideswiped, actually, by in a way I didn't expect. There was so much power that I was feeling after that, but once I stopped doing that, I was, you know, sideswiped. And so I know that Satan fears fasting, but we don't have to fear Satan. In fact, we're instructed not to. So here's what we're doing. So from the like I said, yeah, on the 12th, we're going to start preparing, but the actual fasting itself starts on the 14th, and we'll go to, is it the 14th? Is that right? Is that right? 14th through the, oh, you know what? Actually, I do have my dates slightly off. So the 14th is going to be the start, and then it will run for 2 weeks. And so it'll be the 28th. It'll be, yeah, right on that is when we'll stop. And so what we'll do is we'll do a type of fasting that is going to be uh, juice fasting. And I know this is going to be a challenge for a lot of people, so that's why I introduced my concept of, you know, transitioning more slowly into a time like this and making sure that your body is not in shock by doing this. A lot of people think that there's like misery is required for fasting, and that is just I couldn't really find. There's only one type of fasting that is like that, and that is when you're mourning or you're fasting for repentance. That I've seen that example. The rest are not really. There's no context for fasting for misery. We have, you know, what Daniel did for fasting for a demonstration of power. That was a very much like a, oh yeah, I'll show you what God can do. And so there was that. There's also some context there. We'll probably do a true Daniel fast at some point in one of these times. But in my life right now, I feel a call towards um, purification, I guess you could say. And so in my past, the way I've done that from a physical standpoint is by taking all, you know, physical food out and doing only juice. And when I say juice, I don't mean like orange juice. I mean like vegetables that you would never even eat, like physically, like you never actually take in your, you, know, you put in your salad or whatever. A lot of these things you can actually juice, and it makes it easier to work with. But also, it is really this one person that they called it freebasing Mother Nature. That's probably not the most appropriate way to think about this, but it kind of is. You're concentrating all those, you know, nutrients and phytonutrients and all those vitamins and minerals and things we don't ever think about. You're concentrating those in and doing that as a method of, you know, restoring your body. And so at other times I might do like water only fasting and things like that. Or sometimes I'll just fast from a very specific thing, like, you know, not doing meat or, you know, I think like whatever that looks like, you know. So in preparation for a fast like this that is a little bit more intense, the body needs to be drawn, you know, downward towards it, do the thing, and then draw them back up slowly to regular food. I want to guide you through my process that and give you the time to discuss this with, you know, any kind of medical professionals if you are in need of that. I myself take medications, and so I have discussed these kind of things with doctors and know how to monitor this. And so we'll, you know, like a lot of fasting can increase blood pressure, for example, and so you need to be monitoring this and keeping yourself safe during this process. God doesn't want you to suffer; He wants you to be vigilant about this. This is just a way to surrender that and allow yourself, in this case, to be purified, and not only by study but by a physical act of you know, of difference here. And so I want you to be, you know, safe and secure in that. So we're going to be doing that. I'm going to be doing some things that are going to be further preparing you, some videos I'll be releasing and that sort of thing. And we'll be talking after each of these days of fasting, but also in terms of what's on the screen here. And I will make sure the link is in probably comments or whatever going forward. But there's a link there to join. It's listed as a class, and it kind of is. But it's a time where we can go together and experience this together. I was in the past. I've done this on Facebook. I'm choosing this time around not to do it on Facebook, and the reason why is I want to have some time of interaction with you. So what this allows me to do is to have Zoom classes 3 days a week, to where you can just join me via Zoom and actually ask me your questions. We can encourage each other directly and that sort of thing. And so right now it'll be Mondays, Wednesdays, and like one or two of the Saturdays or whatever it is. It's all out there. It's on the page, but you'll be able to attend those and get reminders of that, and it's a little bit more interactive than it would be on just like a one-way video like this. And so this is something I'm encouraging you to consider joining us for this time of fasting. I'm not going to be offended if two people are with me, but I would love to see 200. And just that's the way this goes. So I'm looking forward to it in a weird kind of way. I know looking forward to fasting sounds really strange. But I want to introduce you to this concept that it is not about suffering. It is about renewal. It is about, it should be a time of joy. And you know what? It is. And so, yeah, this is just walking in obedience in that way. And so I wanted to introduce you to that. Now, in preparing for this, and we'll talk more about this tomorrow. I think I'm running out of time here, but what I want to show you tomorrow is kind of some ways to try and prepare for juicing as a fasting method, because it takes more work, and more preparation and more thinking in advance about how to do it. And so what I want to go through tomorrow is showing you how to do some preparation for that. If you want to do like I do and have your own hardware on hand to be able to do this, let me show you two different things you can use. These are just going to be some links to Amazon to be able to get these. So the first is a centrifugal faster, or I think there's other names for it, but basically it has a spinning disc in it, and you put the veggies in, and it forces it onto the disc, and that is spinning so fast that the juice goes through the strainer and drains down, but any of the fibrous material is basically shot out by the force there. And so it's a cool way to do it. It's actually a fast way to make a juice. So that is something. It's also cheaper. I mean, I believe last time I looked at this, it was around $70 US on Amazon or something like that. So it's actually a fairly affordable way to go. Good way to get into it. Um, I personally have. I think I dropped the one we had or something like that. I broke it, and so for our next round of fasting, I actually did a different model, which is a slow juicer. It uses a process of just mashing the juice and extracting the. I'm making things with my hands here, but it actually extracts the juice more slowly, so you're getting more of those enzymes and some of the fiber and things like that, depending on what kind of things you're doing. But I find that this is a more intense tasting juice as well, but it also keeps for less time because there's so much of those enzymes and things like that. So it's pretty much a daily process, whereas the other stuff you can usually have a couple days worth of materials that you can just kind of combine into whatever recipe you want. With this, it's pretty much just like you're making your juice for the day, and it's only for that day. So it's a daily process kind of thing. But along with that, a lot of times there are um, places that like around where we live, around Franklin, Tennessee. I know there's a store that you can actually do a fasting program with, where they just give you go there every other day or whatever it is, and they have about a gallon or half gallon of juice prepared for you that they give you to take home and put in your refrigerator and just be able to do. And it's along a program that they have. And sometimes they have upwards of like even 30 days of a juice cleanse that you can do with those kind of things that are the math is done for you. The recipes are there, and so you can just pay them to do it basically. And you know what, that is a really good option, and one I have been actively considering for this year. But I think I probably will just do some juicing on our own. So one of the things that will be in the course as well is some recipes and things like that I'm going to start throwing together during the week. I've got some work to do, obviously, and a way for us to collaborate on recipes that we find as well and things like that. And so, yeah, so there's that. Even though it is going to be a lot of effort, I have decided to make this something that's free to join, and we'll have a mechanism at some point. If you want to support me financially for the work that's going on, great. If not, it doesn't matter. I really want to do this as a service to teach people how to fast, because I really do think this is something where we're called to this as a people. And so hope you'll join me. And I have a mastermind meeting that I need to get into, so I will bid you all farewell and hope to see you tomorrow for another day of Proverbs each day. Yeah, have a great one, everyone. Love you. We'll see you tomorrow.